So, Chris, can I ask you to start live streaming the meeting, please?
Hi, just to let you know we are live now.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking to see. Yeah, I think other people have joined now. Okay, so welcome to tonight's meeting, the Planning Applications Committee. Just to inform people that this meeting will be live streamed and it's also being recorded to go out later on the council's website. Just a reminder for anybody, please turn your phones off or put them onto silent. And for members, when you if you need to indicate to speak, just raise the hand icon on the computer, please. Takes us on to item number 2, is to receive apologies. I've had apologies from Councillor Rudkin, who's been substituted by Councillor Pomfret. I don't believe we've got any others. Victoria, can you just confirm that, please?
No other apologies, Chair.
Okay, thank you. That takes us on to item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting on the 27th of October. Is everybody happy that the true and correct record? Okay, thank you. Item 4 is to receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary and other interest in accordance with the Members' Code of Conduct. That's if they're not already recorded in the agenda, but if you become aware of anything as we proceed, please let us know. Nothing there, thank you. Item 5, declarations of contact. I suppose the only one we've had, I think we've all had it, was a copy of some comments that have been sent in. That I think they're going to be read out anyway. Yes?
Chair, Councillor Wilson has his hand raised.
Ooh, not on mine. Oh, yeah. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I did raise my hand about declarations of pecuniary or other interests. I have another interest in that I am a member of Chilverscoaton Conservative Club, but I haven't discussed this or have any dealings with the management committee about it. I'm just an ordinary member.
Okay, and apologies for that. I didn't see your hand there.
No, it's okay, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Tromans.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to make the same statement. I'm also a member of the club there, but have not discussed this matter with them in any way.
Okay, then. Thank you. If you can put your hands down if you've finished, that'll help me, please. Which takes us on to item 6, applications for planning permission. Well, we've only got the one item, and we do have some representation, I think. So, if I can ask if we move on to item number 1 then, which is John Street, Nuneaton. Claire?
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the erection of a 4-bed detached house at a disused garage site to the rear of John Street and Henry Street, Nuneaton. Objections from neighbouring properties have been received as detailed on the agenda, raising issues such as poor access, limited on-street parking, the dwelling not being in keeping with the area, overlooking and highway safety. In terms of the principle of the development, the site is located within the settlement boundary of Nuneaton and therefore would be an acceptable location for residential development in principle under policy DS2 of the Borough Plan. It would make use of an untidy site in the borough, but the development must be compliant with other policies. With regard to residential amenity, the shortest distance between the neighbouring properties along John Street and the boundary is approximately 40 metres, and the plans indicate that the proposed dwelling is situated an additional metre from this boundary. making the shortest distance between the rear walls of these neighbours and the side wall of the proposed dwelling approximately 15 metres, which complies with distance standards set out in the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD. There is a proposed first floor side facing window serving a bathroom facing these neighbours, but distance from this non-habitable room are met. The proposed dwelling would run close to the rear boundaries on properties in John Street, particularly number 6, which is that property there. However, this is not the most usable amenity space in the garden, so this impact is not considered severe. There is just over 90 metres separation between the front elevation and the properties along Henry Street, and distance standards normally require 20 metres. However, due to the angle of the properties in relation to the proposal and the walkway between the site, this distance is considered acceptable and is not considered would cause a loss of light, privacy, or cause a sense of enclosure. All other distance standards are met. Within the adopted SPD on sustainable design and construction, minimum space standards are now required for new builds. The proposed gross floor space of the dwelling exceeds these standards and is therefore acceptable. In terms of visual amenity, the immediate surrounding area is mostly comprised of terraced and semi-detached dwellings, although there are some detached dwellings in the wider area. Policy BE3 of the Borough Plan states that all development proposals must contribute to local distinctiveness and character by reflecting the positive attributes of the neighbouring area, and key characteristics to review include street layout and patterns of development. This is reinforced in the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD, which states that development should take into account the local context and pattern of development and consider the layout of existing buildings, streets and landscape. And dwellings positioned behind the public highway in a front-to-back relationship, i.e. backland development, will need to integrate successfully with surrounding developments. It is considered in this instance that the proposal does not integrate sufficiently with the surrounding area and would result in an isolated dwelling and would constitute backland development which is not in keeping with the existing pattern of development in the area. The proposed dwelling is also not reflective of the type or size of dwellings in the immediate area, nor does it propose a design that is outstanding or innovative. It is therefore considered that the proposals would have a detrimental impact on visual amenity. In relation to highway safety, the NPPF states that when assessing applications, it should be ensured that safe and suitable access can be achieved for all users. The previous application on the site for the construction of 3 terraced houses was dismissed at appeal. The main reason for this was that as the width of the access was not wide enough to allow 2 vehicles to pass each other, it would mean that delivery and service vehicles could not use the access. The inspector found that larger service vehicles would be likely to park on John Street, and due to the limited on-street parking, could result in obstructions on the highway. Although this proposal has reduced the number of proposed dwellings, these issues are still prevalent. County Highways have objected on a number of grounds. The first being that it is not clear if the existing garages on the site are to be demolished. Clarification from the agent has been requested, but no further information has been provided. Therefore, officers consider that it has not been adequately demonstrated that the proposed development, together with the existing garage uses on the site, would not result in an intensification of a substandard access, which could have a detrimental impact on highway safety. Warwickshire County Council Highways also object to the wall between the existing access and the footpath, so that's along here, this boundary. They object to that being removed as shown on the plans. They object to this as it would create a shared space between vehicles and pedestrians and potential conflicts between pedestrian vehicles to the detriment of pedestrian and highway safety. County Highways also have concerns about how the site would be serviced in the future, especially in terms of fire and rescue and refuse. The refuse team have been consulted and have stated that due to the narrowness of the access, the refuse bins would need to be presented at the roadside, but have no objections to this. Warwickshire Fire and Rescue have been consulted and have responded that the proposed plans do not provide enough detail to allow an accurate assessment of the access road, and therefore it could not be ascertained if there will be sufficient access to accommodate a fire appliance. Officers therefore consider there would be inadequate servicing arrangements which would make it difficult to access to and from the site. This could lead to larger service vehicles parking on John Street, and due to the limited amount of on-street parking, would create obstructions on the highway and vehicle and pedestrian conflict to the detriment of highway safety. It has also not been adequately demonstrated that a sufficient access and manoeuvrability within the site is provided to accommodate a fire appliance in order to service the site in the event of an emergency situation. The recommendation is therefore refusal as detailed on the agenda and addendum. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, Claire. Can I just confirm, Victoria, we don't actually have any speakers on this?
We do. Mr. Ahmed Dabadi is waiting to speak on this. He's the person. You have the copy of what he'll say that sent to you earlier?
Right. I wasn't informed he was actually speaking, but okay then. Okay, right. The gentleman would like to make his comments then.
Hiya, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, thank you.
Hiya, thank you very much. To be honest, most of what I wanted to say has been covered by the previous speaker in terms of the issues with the access loss, the boundary element, the highway safety, the effects of the construction, the layout, etc. The couple of points that I wanted to make was the plans don't really outline the water flow or drainage of the outer borders of the plot. Without clear and concise info, any dwelling built on unlevel ground, the natural flow of the water will flow directly onto the properties of Henry Street and cause further damage. Also, on the application, the hedging and trees, the application states there have no trees or hedges on the site. Either my site's severely failing me or a key question has incorrectly been answered. An additional concern is if this was to be approved, would the development revert back to the initial application from 2012 of multiple dwellings? Historically, the plot was used as garages. The parking issues in the vicinity are clearly visible, and the plot should revert back to them and reduce the impact. Personally, I ask for the application to be rejected with a clear and concise message that future applications of a similar nature won't be accepted, with a recommendation to the owner to commence dialogue with the local residents to what is needed or acceptable if they insist on pursuing this. Finally, I'd like to conclude by saying that the land has been neglected by the owner since the last refusal. The residents of Henry Street are fending off fly tippers and regularly trimming the overgrown bushes, shrubbery that do not allow us to walk freely along the passage without being caught by the sharp brambles. Not once in all this time have they paid any notice. For this reason alone, this application should be torn up, shredded and archived with a seal of rejection. And finally, on the application, there's a boundary wall between the walkway and the plot, and the application shows that the boundary wall will be removed. Well, I've seen a covenant and I've sent details of this as part of my submission, that in 1978, a covenant was signed with the HM Land Registry to keep this as a walkway for all the residents from 18 to 38 Henry Street. Now, where do we go if somebody just turns up and breaks this wall? at the end of the day, the new proprietor could block access for the rear of our properties by putting a gate up if the wall was broken. And things like this have just been totally overlooked, not consulted properly since the last application. And on that basis alone, I ask for this application to be rejected.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ahmadabadi. Could you just confirm to me, is the list of 10 things that, that we given, did that come from yourself, did it?
It did, yes, it did, yeah.
It's all right, there was no name attached to it, and I thought there was a separate thing. Okay. If you just hang on 1 minute while I ask if has any members got any points of clarification? No, okay then. In which case, to enable debate, can I move the recommendation as printed, which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons as printed? Is that seconded?
I'll second that, Chair. Councillor Pomfret.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Does any member wish to speak? Councillor Tandy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I actually lived in Henry Street for many years, and I fully understand the difficulties with this. In fact, when I first saw the application, I had to go and have another look, because I thought there was never enough space to get vehicles properly off John Street, as you say, a very, very bad area. And I represented that area for many years on the county council as well, so I knew it well. So I was very, very surprised to see the application. I'm not sure whether the question has been answered. It does feature quite a lot in the papers as to whether or not the derelict garages were actually going to be removed as a result of the application, because I did see when I went to have a look that they are in a bad state. And apart from the proximity of all the other houses in John Street and in Henry Street, I can see that this is just not an acceptable application, Chair. So I certainly would not wish to agree the application, specifically on the grounds of the access. Never mind any of the other issues that have been raised, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Shepherd.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased that the highways have looked at this application and have made the things. The access is an absolute nightmare. Pedestrians going up and down there, and to have vehicles and pedestrians, I think, in conflict with the removal of a wall would be extremely foolish. The space is very narrow. I can understand residents' concerns. I'm more than happy to support the recommendation by the officers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the recommendation to refuse, but I think some parts of the refusal I don't necessarily agree with. I certainly agree on the grounds of highway and access, and those are the two strongest points for refusal. But I feel if this went to appeal, some of the other reasons we have put down for refusal may be found to be unreasonable. Now, I've been going to the Coton Conservative Club now for 17, maybe 18 years, and it's always been a scrubland back there as far as I can remember going there. So it's not just since 2012. This has been, for years, it's been like that. So we've got down here reasons for refusal, that it's not designed to a high standard, able to accommodate the changing needs of occupants, adaptable to minimise the impact of climate change. Well, from what I can see in the papers, the designs look like they are a suitable standard. They are no worse or better than what we as a committee have approved or not. Accommodate the changing needs of occupants. Well, it's got kitchens, bathrooms, bedrooms, studies, etc. Hallway, lounge. So it would meet the needs of the occupants. And in terms of being able to adapt to climate change, well, how certain are we that all the other houses that we approve and housing estates which are coming up of 500, 600, 700 up to 1,000 houses which are coming up, how many of those do we actually say minimise the impact of climate change? So I think that one is a bit weak. And the urban character, yes, there is an urban character, but anything you design here, you aren't going to get a terraced house like this from when it was originally built. And it won't meet the existing pattern of development because of that. But we have approved in other places 1 or 2 or sometimes 3 backyard developments because they are on a plot of land. And let's face it, this plot of land is derelict and has been doing nothing for at least 20 years that I know of, and it looks an absolute eyesore. So putting something there would actually bring it back into use and do something positive with the land. The main issue I see is the actual access and the highways. I think we could be held to be unreasonable on the other grounds if we keep those in. So whilst other members may approve it on those grounds, I would like it noted that I only agree, Chair, with part 2 about the highways and access, because in any other place we would have accepted this application, I feel, and we are leaving a derelict scrubland there. If there was some other way, the garages, I completely agree. We need to know what the plan is for them, because if you were still having 6, 7, 8 garages there plus this, it would be unacceptable. But are we as a committee content to leave that land there as scrubland for perpetuity? It's not fair to the residents either. So something needs to be done with this land. I feel housing may be the only way to go about it, but it's squaring the circle of the housing and the highway safety chair. I think those are our biggest wins in refusing this. I think it may be overkill on the other grounds, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, some reasonable points there, and I'm going to ask Claire to respond to some of them, but I'll finish with the speakers first, I think. Councillor Watkins. Okay, we've got you, Councillor Watkins. You're muted. Chris, you're muted. Try now.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I find myself in a bit of a predicament here because as a council and being portfolio holder for housing and communities, we're looking for garage sites to develop. So, and we are actually building on old garage sites. However, when I look at this and see the objections from Warwickshire Fire and Rescue Service and from Warwickshire County Council, and also the plan really with a street view with a square box sort of drawn in it, it's not the best. I think some more consultation between planners and the applicant, a little bit more work done here, and I think in future perhaps it could the applicant can bring it back and we could have another look at it, but a little bit more detail from the applicant needed, I think, on this. But otherwise, I think it would make good use of what is derelict, unused land. That I wanted to say, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I haven't got anybody else indicating, so I'm going to make a couple of points, Claire, then ask you to come back on stuff. I can understand where a couple of the speakers are coming from, you know, about the land, and I mean, I don't know what pre-application discussions officers have had with the landowners, but there's certainly an issue about what happens with the garages on that site, and then of course the access. Whether or not there's been discussions about that, that anything, if anything is possibly developed there, then it can only be for people without vehicles. So I think it's probably important that whatever happens with this, well, if it is refused, that a message goes back to the landowners that it's important to talk to people with the residents and the planners to try and find a use that is suitable for that, indeed, if there is one at all. And just finally, Claire, I think it's important sometimes just to reiterate the issue, because the gentleman that spoke mentioned about covenants and the boundaries. As far as I'm aware, those are things that aren't within remit of the planning committee or the council, that they're kind of neighbour disputes, but I'm happy if you tell me if I'm wrong, just to clear things up. Thanks, Claire. I'm sorry, there's a bit of a list there, but you can come back on them.
Yes, thanks, Chair. Yeah, in relation to your last point regarding covenants, yeah, you're quite right. That's outside the remit of the planning application, and will be something to be dealt with between the different parties, the site owner and then the neighbours. Okay, regarding the other points, which Councillor Wilson and Councillor Watkins raised, yes, there is policy BE3 of the Borough Plan that we've used to formulate a reason for refusal, and there are different elements to that policy, but that does point out various criteria which an application should meet, and some of them being street layout and patterns of development. But then the SPD, the Sustainable Design and Construction SPD, then takes that a little bit further and supports that policy. And then we can also use paragraphs within that document to substantiate our reason for refusal. The SPD does make it count that local context and pattern of development, the layout of existing buildings and streets needs to be taken into account, and dwellings that are positioned sort of front to back from the highway are classed as backland development, which is something that is not encouraged. Yes, we have developed and approved and some of our own garage sites for housing, but those have been sites which create a cohesive group of their own. So a number of dwellings on that site, so not necessarily classed as backland development because it creates their own cohesiveness. Whereas this application is different to that. It is seen, as officers see it as, and reading the policies and the SPD, a dwelling which will be isolated, not in keeping with the surrounding area. But obviously this is a recommendation. Members may choose to not include that as a reason for refusal, but it is something that officers feel is necessary based on the policy and the supporting SPD.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Claire. Which then takes us then to the recommendation, which has been moved and seconded, which is to refuse planning permission for the reasons as printed. Wahid, I'm going to ask you if you could take an individual vote on this, please.
Certainly, Chair. If you could indicate for or against the motion to refuse planning permission as proposed. Councillor Phillips.
Against.
Councillor Gran.
For.
Councillor Hancox.
For.
Councillor Lloyd.
For.
Councillor Tandy.
For.
Councillor Pandaher,
4.
Councillor Pomfret,
4.
Councillor Sargent,
4.
Councillor Shepherd,
4.
Councillor Smith,
4.
Councillor Troman. Oh, sorry. Yes, Councillor Tromans.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Watkins
4.
and Councillor Wilson.
4.
Chair, that's
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's
voted.
clearly carried. So the the recommendation to refuse planning permission has been agreed. Okay. Thank you very much. We only had that one application tonight. I'm really worried we're going to have a build-up at some point of them, which takes us on to any other items. I don't have any urgent items except to thank all the members for their involvement in this year. It's been a lot of new stuff for us doing things like this and not getting together. So can I just wish everybody a happy Christmas and stay safe and well. Thank you. Bye.
You too, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.